to welcome you all here today to this important seminar. This has been informed, I suppose, by survey work that Drinks Ireland did within the membership in terms of where we were at on sustainability. And one of the things that came out of that was that number of members either hadn't got a sustainability strategy or hadn't one that they were an up-to-date one, or one that they were happy with. So this seminar is about, I suppose, trying to help members to address that. I'd like to, I suppose, at the start, to thank, sometimes we forget about Vincent and the team in IBEC and Drinks Ireland, who put a huge amount of work into pulling these workshops together. So I'd like to thank them in the first instance. And then I'd like to introduce and thank in advance our two speakers. So we have Martin Hoffler from Origin Green in Bord Bia, and we have Karen Duignan from Sustainability Works. So both speakers, and I know we've tic-tacked with them over the last couple of weeks on this, and if you'll excuse the pun, they've put in a lot of work to distill down a huge area into two very relevant and pertinent presentations for our members. So just to give you a bit of background on them, so Martin has 10 years sustainability experience working across private and public organisations. He's Bord Bia's Sustainability and Partnership Manager, so he collaborates with industry and government departments to support the delivery of EU and Irish climate policy objectives, as well as the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about them throughout the presentations. Part of Martin's talk, or a good chunk of Martin's talk, is informed by recent Bord Bia research on buyers, consumers, and thought leaders in different markets. But he's put the work into kind of make that very relevant to the alcohol business. Then we have Karen Duignan. So Karen is co-founder of Sustainability Works, which is a consultancy who are on a mission to accelerate Ireland's shift to a sustainable future. She works with organisations to develop sustainability strategy and to communicate their progress. She's worked over the last 20 years supporting lots of well-known brands and businesses on their sustainability journey. And she also runs training courses for SMEs on topics like the circular economy. And I know she's done some work recently with the IBEC team as well. So the way the workshop is going to work, we're just going to start off with Martin, and then we will run straight from that into Karen's presentation, and then we will take questions at the end. So if you can save your questions, and we'll have them at the end. Okay, so Martin, over to you.
You're on mute, Martin.
That's handy to know that, Vincent. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak at this workshop today. Today I'll be sharing Bord Bia's recent Global Food Sustainability Outlook research and the results that relate to the alcohol sector. In this presentation, I will first detail advances in sustainability trends in the food and drink industry, and then I'll delve into what this means for the alcohol sector amongst both suppliers and consumers. So in the first half of 2021, Bord Bia conducted global research to better understand the global sustainability demands around food and drink sustainability. The global survey was conducted both domestically here in Ireland and in 12 other markets around the world. Firstly, we engaged with thought leaders and NGOs to better understand what their sustainability focus was on. Then we went and spoke to about 189 customers to understand what were their key sustainability drivers and what were they looking for from their suppliers. And then finally, we spoke to over 11,000 consumers to better understand what influences their purchasing decisions and what sustainability topics are of increased importance to them. So, as we set out to develop the sustainability research, we then began to identify what were the key sustainability topics influencing both buyers and consumers. We set on a relatively short list of about 25 topics. You might laugh at that, but the original list was much, much longer, but we condensed them down into 3 areas here. And we used these sustainability topics as kind of the touch points in understanding what was influencing their buying decisions. So the top level findings of the research has shown that sustainability is of a growing importance for both customers and consumers. No longer is sustainability seen as a niche factor when making purchasing decisions for buyers or consumers, but this is specifically true for consumers, as over the past year, 75% of consumers globally have made a conscious effort to purchase more sustainably. This increased interest in sustainability, in truth, has been occurring for over 10 years or so. At the beginning of the last decade, sustainability was seen as an operational factor mainly within organizations and played a minimal role in stakeholder communications or as a tool to differentiate your brand. However, that began to change midway through the last decade, as new climate global agreements such as the Paris Accord were agreed, and the public became ever more aware of the damage humans were doing to the planet. And this was led through investigations by NGOs, as well as increased media attention, most notably by David Attenborough's Blue Planet series. Today, sustainability is well integrated across multiple departments when some of the world's largest food and beverage companies, as well as retailers. They see sustainability as integral to their business success through differentiation and not simply as a risk mitigation factor. Yet sustainability is always evolving, and as we look forward, sustainability is here to stay and will likely grow in importance in the year ahead as regulators and policymakers make ever more ambitious sustainability regulation. This regulation is very much supported by the general public at large, so there will be an increased focus on both the suppliers and buyers to produce those sustainability credentials. In saying that sustainability is of importance for the sector, the food and drink sector at large, this differs or varies across the sector, depending on the type of company and your role within the company. What we see here is two spheres emerging, an agenda sphere and a consumption sphere. In the agenda sphere, we have NGOs and we have the large multinational food and drink companies who have well-established sustainability divisions. Their interest in sustainability is not on single topics. It's very much on holistic sustainability, circular economy, the blue economy, and other sustainability thoughts. They're focused on the future trends that are coming and how they can capitalize on them to differentiate their products going forward and to achieve the global sustainability ambitions, either set at the EU level or at the UN level. The second sphere is the consumption sphere. In this sphere, we have companies, generally SMEs and buyer divisions of some of the larger companies. And they're more focused on single sustainability topic areas, whether it be emissions, packaging, health and nutrition. And within their companies, they're trying to develop the credentials and provide the evidence that they're meeting those sustainability credentials. Sustainability is of immediate concern to them. They're probably not looking over the horizon and seeing what sustainability trends are coming, but they may have a sustainability division or work with a consultancy to identify what future sustainability concerns will be on the rise. Now I'll move on to talk about the buyers and more specifically what alcohol buyers are looking for in the areas of sustainability. When sustainability buyers were asked to describe the purpose of the sustainability agenda for their organization, the following results were received. These results clearly indicate that sustainability is not a tick box exercise, but is essential to the business performance. Only 1 in 5 stated that sustainability is only important to their sustainability or CSR team, compared to 3 in 5 saying that is integral to keeping up with consumer demands, and 1 in 2 saying that is integral to the company's business performance and helps differentiate the business. Overall, these results are broadly in line with the results seen in other food and drink subsectors. For buyers, sustainability is also a preferred supplier attribute. We can see that 2 in 5 alcohol buyers see sustainability as an important attribute when selecting supplier. While it's not surprising to see quality and increased margins to be the top 2 criteria above sustainability attributes. Importantly to note, compared to other sectors, the attributes of improved margin and being close to the local area were of increased importance for alcohol buyers. I know when I speak to alcohol buyers, mainly in North America, they're asking me how close Irish whiskey producers are to the US markets and whether they produce in the US so they can have a local or origin story. Overall, 76% of buyers stated that sustainability credentials are of importance. However, currently only 41% of their suppliers claim to have sustainability credentials or can provide them. This demonstrates to Irish suppliers that there is an opportunity for Irish suppliers to improve their sustainability communications and actions to differentiate themselves from the competitors and help satisfy that buyer demand for increased sustainability credentials. Now looking at what consumers are looking for from alcohol companies. The research demonstrated that sustainability considerations are becoming core to all global consumers. Across all sectors, 61% of consumers stated that they intend to buy more sustainably produced products in the next 3 years. Oops, something went. You can still see my slides there?
Yes, I can still see those, and it's just moved on to slide 18.
Perfect. When we asked the 11,000 consumers to identify which of the 25 sustainability topics that were important to them in informing their sustainability decisions when making purchases, we can see that quality assurance, natural products, food waste, locality, and packaging were of key concern to the consumers. These results are broadly in line what we see across all subsectors of the food and drink industry, and this is also replicated in the alcohol sector, which I'll look at later. Quality assurance comes out on top across all subsectors, mainly because quality assurance for a lot of companies and consumers is a catch-all for many sustainability attributes, whether it be transparency, animal welfare, responsible sourcing of raw materials. They identify with this, and it's not surprising to see this all the way to the right-hand side of the table. Outside of alcohol and meat and dairy-free, the majority of shoppers believe that sustainability is at least very important. While fruit and veg is seen as a category where sustainability is most important, numbers are quite similar across meat, dairy, and the seafood categories. We see fruit and veg regularly come out on top here, as consumers tend to think sustainability is more important, the less processing there is from raw product to final product. These findings do not discount sustainability as an important factor for alcohol sector amongst consumers, as 75% believe sustainability is of somewhat importance. For other sectors, there's an increased emphasis on sustainability within the media and within the policy objectives. This is specifically true for the seafood industry, the meat, and the dairy industry. So it's not surprising to see consumers are more aware of sustainability concerns relating to these food product categories. When we look at what alcohol consumers in the US and Polish market found to be the most important sustainability consideration, by far and away, quality assurance came to the fore. As I said before, quality assurance is a catch-all for many different sustainability considerations. But when speaking to the Insights team who conducted this research, they also felt that quality assurance could relate to the brand recognition of Irish whiskey or Scottish whiskey, the locality and origin and the broader brand recognition that come under some of those wider brands. This sustainability consideration is the same across all sectors. And when we look further down the table to the left, we can see important topics such as nutrition and packaging coming to the fore. Now, I mentioned earlier how some buyers will have more emphasis on different sustainability considerations. When speaking to some alcohol distributors recently in the US, their focus was mainly on packaging and on community, how alcohol producers are better engaging in the communities where they live, and how they can provide fundraising opportunities. And this is of very much importance for these companies. So when you're speaking with any of your buyers, I would ask you to look at their own sustainability documents. Every company tailors their own sustainability recommendations based on the needs of their companies and the consumers they serve to. So this table here is probably an indicative result of what possibly are the key trends across market, but they'll differ within different buyers. So that was a quick presentation today. There's a lot more research behind what I just presented today, but I'm conscious of time. The main takeaways I would say is that sustainability is of growing importance across all product categories, and that is the same true for alcohol. Alcohol might not be top of mind, or alcohol sustainability might not be top of mind for the consumers, but at supplier level, sustainability credentials are very much desired. And you can see there's a gap of that 70% that would like sustainability credentials to the 40% of suppliers who are able to offer them. And then we look at consumers, and I've listed out the top priorities here as the research from the recent research has shown: quality assurance, naturally produced, product packaging, high standards of safety, and responsible water use are the key sustainability credentials that consumers want to see when they're purchasing alcohol. Again, these can change depending on what niche markets you're entering into, and I probably would ask you to look at deeper research of your own to identify if you're selling a premium product into a certain market or a certain buyer, what are the sustainability attributes that resonate within that market. As I said, what I've presented today is very much top line. To discover more sustainability insights, you can go to borbia.ie/global sustainability insights to find more of the sustainability insights across all sectors. Later this month, we will have a page devised on a subsector basis for alcohol, dairy, beef. So I will ask you to come back in a few weeks' time to see more results relating to the alcohol sector. So I will answer any questions later in the presentation, but now I'll hand over to Karen. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I will take control of the slides now. Let's see if this works. Great. I think it's working. Can everybody see that slide with my name on it?
Yep, that's moved forward, Karen.
Brilliant. Thanks, Vincent. Okay, hi everybody. It's really nice to be on today's call with you all. As Michael said at the beginning, I'm Karen Duignan, and I'm one of the co-founders of a small consultancy called Sustainability Works. We work with lots of different businesses, primarily in Ireland, and we're very much about helping to try and make the complex world of sustainability simple and actionable for people. I've worked in sustainability all my career. I've mostly worked with large kind of corporate clients, but I have more recently done some more work with SMEs, as Michael mentioned, on topics like circular economy. What I'm going to talk to you about today is the kind of process that you would go through to develop or update your sustainability strategy or plan. So my focus is not going to be on, what should you be doing? It's more, what is the structured process that you can go through so that you have thought about this in a logical way and so that you can prioritize some of what you do? Because let's face it, this is a very broad agenda. There are lots of issues and topics to contend with. We're all very busy people, especially those of you who are in kind of smaller businesses where you might be the CEO, the finance person, the HR person, and the person who makes the tea. So how are you going to fit thinking about sustainability into your day? What I'm going to try and do today is just give you a structured way of thinking about this so that you can come up with a plan that is kind of organized and that has some thought in it that you can then communicate to the buyers that you're talking to or to your various other stakeholders. So three main areas that I'm going to cover. First of all, Martin's already given us a flavor of the sustainability agenda and how it's kind of really moving up in importance over the last few years. But I'm just going to give a quick recap to set the scene on who and what is driving the agenda. Then we'll go through those key steps in terms of how to develop or update your sustainability plan. And then I'll finish with a bit of inspiration, just a few examples of some companies that I've had a quick look at to see how are they talking about what they're doing on sustainability. So what is this whole agenda about, and who's driving it? I'm sure, you know, even though you live and breathe whiskey, I live and breathe sustainability for my day job, but nobody will have escaped a lot of the kind of media coverage, and it's just such a hot topic everywhere now, sustainability, and the fact that we need to change so much about how we live, how industry works, everything about kind of how society functions needs to go through quite a radical transformation in the next few decades if we're to achieve a more sustainable way of living. But what we mean by sustainability, when we talk about it in Sustainability Works, we're talking not just about environmental sustainability, but about the broader definition, which encapsulates environmental issues, social issues, and economic ones. And it's about the intersection of those issues and the balance between, if you're a business, thinking about people, thinking about your impact on the planet, but also being able to make a profit. So making profit, but doing it in a sustainable way. And the end goal that we're trying to get to is kind of illustrated here by this diagram on the right, which is a model called Donut Economics by an economist called Kate Raworth. Her theory and what she's trying to show here is a new way of thinking about economy and economics. What we have around the very outside are the planetary boundaries. So we know that there's only so many natural resources we can use, so much carbon dioxide that we can put out into the atmosphere in order for the planet to remain safe and habitable. So they're the planetary boundaries. In the middle, there are societal needs that we need to meet for every person living on the planet. So we all need shelter, we all need food, we all need access to healthcare, etc. So planetary boundaries on the outside, societal needs in the middle. And where we're trying to get to is that safe space, which is the green ring. And that is the place where all of us can thrive, where businesses can work well, where societies and economies can run, where everyone has access to food, healthcare, etc., but where all that is done within planetary boundaries. So that's our kind of broad understanding of sustainability. It's a holistic approach, not just about environment. It's probably best encapsulated by the Sustainable Development Goals, which many of you may have heard of. These are a set of 17 global goals established by the United Nations in 2015. They cover a range of social, environmental, and economic topics. The idea is that the world needs to work together in order to achieve these goals by 2030, if we are to create a society that is fair, equitable, prosperous for all, and without harming the planet. So a lot of governments, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations use these sustainable development goals as the kind of big picture for their sustainability thinking. And even when developing a sustainability strategy or a plan as a business, you can have these sustainable development goals in mind and think, what contribution are we making to these goals, which is really what the world needs. So if that's the kind of broad setting for sustainability and what it is, what is driving this up the agenda so fast at the moment? There are a number of different things going on. Again, you'll be aware of all of this, but I think it's just worth recapping on. The first thing is that the scientific consensus has come to the fore at the same time as we are really seeing more of the impacts of climate change starting to hit home. So the IPCC's latest report, which was issued in August, which is really the scientific consensus on what's happening with climate change, what can we predict? That gave us a stark warning in August about the fact that climate change is rapid, it's accelerating, intensifying, and it's really urgent that we tackle it and take radical action. We've also saw over this summer and throughout this year various examples of where climate change is really starting to bite in terms of severe weather impacts and things. Flooding in Germany, as this picture is, wildfires in Australia, in parts of the States, in various other countries. And so I think, you know, the scientists have been talking about this for a while, but we as people and as a society are now seeing it hit home, and that's putting more urgency on the climate agenda. There's also a huge amount happening at a kind of policy and regulatory level, from global down to national. So at the same time as those Sustainable Development Goals were agreed in 2015, we had the Paris Climate Agreement, which around 200 countries in the world signed up to. And the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement is to try and keep global temperatures to 1.5 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels. And in order to do that, we need to rapidly cut carbon emissions. So that's the kind of global agreement that everyone's working to. And then you have the EU bringing out regulation and policy change with the EU Green Deal and driving a lot of the kind of COVID recovery as a green recovery in order to try and move our economies towards a low carbon, circular, resource efficient economy. And then here in Ireland, as you're probably aware, the Climate Action Bill was passed this year. Ireland is aiming to be to reduce carbon emissions by 51% by 2030 across the country, across all sectors of the economy. And in order to do that, we're going to have carbon budgets that will cascade down to the different sectors of the economy. These will be legally binding targets, and we're ultimately aiming to be carbon neutral by 2050. So it's ambitious, the targets that Ireland has set. It's still in the early days now of all of this being sorted out and carbon budgets being allocated to sectors, but we're going to see a real speeding up of policy and regulatory change coming down the track from the EU and from Ireland on climate, but on connected issues like plastics and packaging and other issues as well. The other thing, and this speaks to what Martin was talking about with Bord Bia's Global Insight study, is of course consumers are driving this and retailers are responding to that as well. So at the moment, and as Martin mentioned in the research that was done by Bord Bia, there are lots of different sustainability topics that consumers might be interested in. The ones that they and that therefore buyers are most interested in at the moment are some of the more visible things like packaging and whether the product is natural. And then, of course, they're interested in quality and price as well. But within retail businesses, especially the large retailers, the big retail chains, you'll have the buying teams, but you'll have then the head of sustainability who is responsible for delivering the retail company's sustainability strategy. And they are setting ambitious targets about wanting to be net zero carbon by 2040 and various things like this. And while it might still be at the level of quite tangible things like packaging right now, the conversation is soon going to move towards kind of more discussion around carbon and climate impacts and sustainable agriculture and things like that. Because what the heads of sustainability are talking about now, in another year or so's time, those topics are going to trickle down to the conversations that buyers are having with the suppliers that are wanting to have their products stocked on the retailers' shelves. So it's a fast-moving agenda, and the things that start out in the realm of thought leaders and agenda setters quickly trickle down to buyers, and we're seeing that shift happening on different topics. Another big driver is investors and banks. I don't know if any of you have encountered this firsthand yet, possibly unlikely unless you're one of the large businesses, but banks and investors have really made the connection between environmental and social risks and financial risk. So they've realized that companies that manage environmental and social risk well are also the companies that generally perform better financially. So what you see is that investors are taking much more of an interest in a company's performance on environmental and social topics, and they are looking at companies' performance and rating them and making decisions based on where will we place our money. You may have heard the term ESG. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. And that's the kind of term that investors use when they're talking about the sustainability performance of companies. So they talk about ESG ratings, and it's really about, how well do they think the company that they might invest in or the sector that they're looking to invest in. How well do they think these social and environmental risks are being managed? New legislation just came in July, which means that going forward, banks are going to have to ask a lot more questions of companies that they lend to. They're going to have to ask a lot more questions about climate change and other environmental and social issues. So fast forward, it will take a couple of years to probably trickle down into the kind of conversations that you might have with the lender. But fast forward a couple of years, and if you're going to your bank asking for a loan, they will be asking you to give them more information about environmental and social topics and how those relate to your business and what ones you're actively managing to ensure that the risk of those issues damaging your business or your reputation are under control, and so that therefore you'll be able to pay back your loan. So basically, bottom line, the financial sector is increasingly interested in this agenda. It's going to trickle down to businesses, and that's having a big impact as well. And finally, employees. Again, whether you're a small business or a larger one, all of us as individuals are increasingly aware of the importance of these topics. We also increasingly want meaning from our work, and we want to work for companies that care about people and the planet. So this sustainability topic is really important for employees in terms of them feeling like the company that they work for has a purpose beyond profit, and that they have a role in helping to shape that. So sustainability can be a really great way to engage employees, as long as you can show them how it connects to their role. So that's a quick whiz through of some of the things that are driving the sustainability agenda. I hope that resonates with you, and you may have come into contact with some of those pressures yourselves in your business. So the next piece then is, with that backdrop in mind, how do you develop a sustainability plan? In my mind, it's all about taking a structured approach. When I've worked with large corporates, large businesses, we take them through a step-by-step process. We think about the issues that we need to address. We prioritize the ones where we think the business can have the biggest impact and make the biggest positive change. We also think about the ones that are the biggest risk factors. And then we develop a strategy or a plan that's designed to address those priority risks or opportunities. It's the same kind of principle that applies even if you're a small business. It's about taking a structured approach to thinking about these issues. It's about the basic thing of writing down what you're doing. It sounds so obvious, but what I have found when working with a number of small businesses on this is that often they're doing a lot of work that they don't even realize is part of the sustainability agenda. So they've got good practices in place on the HR side around how they treat their employees. They give back to the community in various ways. They're quite mindful of the packaging that they use. They already purchase kind of green electricity to power their office, but they haven't really put all of these things together and kind of branded it as a sustainability plan. So it's really important to write down everything that you're doing, because you'll be surprised probably at what you've got already before you even start to add to it. So there are 6 steps here that I'm going to talk you through briefly, and this is the approach that kind of we suggest you take in order to develop a robust sustainability plan. I'm going to talk you through each one of these one by one, and then these slides are going to be shared afterwards. Some of them have quite a bit of detail on them. Don't worry about trying to take it all in today. You'll be able to have a flick through yourselves afterwards when we share them. So the first step is to understand the sustainability issues that are relevant to you. As we saw at the beginning, sustainability is a really broad topic, so it covers a whole array of issues. This is kind of a synopsis of the universe of sustainability issues, broadly divided into environment, social, and economic. So you can see here on the environment side, it's all the obvious ones like energy, waste, biodiversity. On the social side, it's things like human rights and labour rights. It's employee health and safety. It's also things like data protection and responsible marketing, things like that. All of those, if you look at the sustainability report of a big company, you'll see all of these issues coming through. And then on the economic side, it's about things like employment and jobs. It's about ensuring that you're complying with any laws that are applicable to you. It's about your general business ethics as well. And then again, if you're a larger business, it's about things like tax transparency and transparent reporting as well. So there are a wide range of issues across the kind of environmental, social and economic piece. And that term ESG that I mentioned earlier, the G stands for governance, of course. So underpinning a lot of these is your governance approach. So how do you actually manage all of this? Who's accountable for it? And what checks and balances do you have in place? If we think about the ones that are relevant for whisky companies, there are a lot of them. And because of the nature of what you do, you're going to be touching on quite a lot of these issues. But if I was to just hone in on the ones that I think are kind of the real priorities for your sector, it would probably be these ones highlighted here in red. So ingredient sourcing is a big one. So you'll be thinking about that in various ways in terms of the provenance of the ingredients, where you source them from, any sustainability credentials that they might have. You know, is your barley organic, or are there any other sustainability credentials attached to the raw ingredients that you use? And things like sustainable agriculture. So again, is there a story there around it being organic, or about the particular agricultural practices that are used? Energy and carbon is another big one. So this is about carbon emissions across your entire value chain. So it will be in your distillation process, in your buildings, and in anything else that you're buying in. So your procurement as well will have a kind of carbon impact, the things that you're choosing to buy, the products and services that you're buying in order to enable you to run your business. Then there's water, an obvious one, packaging, an obvious one, and also waste. Packaging is obviously kind of a subset of waste, but what I'm talking about here in terms of waste is the idea of the circular economy, where one person's waste could be another person's value stream, or where waste can be reused or recycled in some way. Then on the social side, probably the big things are around employee health, safety and well-being. That's essential for any company, whether you're 3 people, 30 people or 3,000. As Martin mentioned earlier, community engagement is also one that they have found retailers are interested in, particularly in certain territories. I think it is particularly big in the States and elsewhere as well. So community engagement and your role in the community and how you're giving back. Obviously, given your sector, responsible drinking, I think would be a big one as well. So you'll touch on all of these issues, but those ones highlighted in red were, to me, the ones that stood out as being probably the kind of top priority ones. So that means that all of those should be addressed as part of your sustainability plan. 2 quick resources I wanted to highlight to you here that are worth having a look at. One is this Drinks Industry Sustainability Trends Report produced by CNC. I had a quick glance through it, and there looked to be some really good content in there around the direction of travel in terms of sustainability for the drinks industry. The other one is from the Beverage Industry Environment Roundtable. This is the one on the right, research on the carbon footprint of spirits. Again, some good information in there showing how, when you look at the carbon footprint across the value chain, where are the main impacts? Is it with the glass bottles? Is it in the distillation process? Is it in the growing of the barley? So interesting to have a look at there, just to get a broad overview, you know, without having to do your own carbon footprinting exercise and hire an expert to do that for you. You can get some good insights from this report as to where the big impacts are, and that can help you to think about where you might make some changes. Okay, so that's step 1, basically understanding what are the major kind of social or environmental issues or impacts that are relevant to us as a whiskey company. The next thing is, it's that old adage of, you can't manage what you don't measure. So if you want to start thinking about reducing your energy use or reducing your carbon emissions or reducing your waste, if you're a large organization and you're thinking about diversity and inclusion or employee satisfaction, for any of these things, if you want to be able to improve, you need to understand where you're starting from. So it's about understanding your baseline. So step 2 in our process here is about getting a baseline of your current practices. Now, that can be as simple as just, again, if you're a small business, getting your team together, sitting down with a piece of paper and thinking about those topics that we just talked about, waste, energy, and so on, and just talking through, okay, what are our energy bills? Where are we using waste? What materials are we using? So this can be kind of a paper-based exercise. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it will help you to get a handle on your kind of current practices. So this is not an exhaustive list, but I've just put a few kind of hints here about the kinds of things you might look for if you were thinking about this. So on the energy side, if you were trying to get an understanding of your current energy use, number one thing is you'd have a look at your bill. Then you might do a walk around of your office or your site and take a note of where are the major kind of pieces of equipment or the major energy uses. And then if you want to go a step further, you might be eligible for an energy audit from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. They have various free supports available. And if you have an expert energy auditor come and have a walk around, then they can give you some more detailed information about your current energy use and suggest areas for improvement. But you can do the similar kind of thing for all of the topics that we talked about, just noting down basically your current practices around these issues. Here's another example of a template that you could use for doing a kind of an audit of your different waste streams. So just making note of where it's generated, the kind of volume that you're generating, how it's currently disposed. And when you have a note of all of these things, then you can think to yourself, okay, where could I make changes? How could I do things differently to be more environmentally friendly? This is another one that I include a link to in the resources. Zero Waste Scotland has some good templates in here, again, for kind of measuring and tracking things like energy and waste. So there's no real kind of quick way to do it. You do have to put in a little bit of time to kind of understand your current practices and current uses around things like energy and waste. But it doesn't have to be hugely complicated. It just requires a little bit of time and putting stuff down on paper or capturing it in a spreadsheet and then keeping track. The next piece is then to identify improvement opportunities. So of course, when you think about all these issues, it can feel a little bit overwhelming because you think, well, where the hell do I start? Should I start by thinking about energy efficiency? Should I start on packaging? Because that's the thing that buyers and consumers are interested in. Where can I actually make the biggest difference from a carbon reduction point of view? So this is just about a simple prioritization exercise, thinking about the issues that are relevant for your business. List out all the potential improvement opportunities or actions that you can think of, and then basically score them for, how easy is this going to be to implement? How much is it going to cost me? What is the likely impact going to be? So is it going to be, small fry, or could this actually put a really big dent in my carbon emissions? And the other key thing is to try and understand what is of interest to your stakeholders. That's something else that might push something up the list. So again, if packaging is a very tangible thing, and if that's something that buyers are asking you about and that consumers are interested in, then that might be a reason to emphasize action around packaging. So it's just about prioritizing them and then choosing the improvement opportunities or actions that you're going to focus on, because you might think of 100 possible things that you could do, but you've got to try and find some way of ranking them and deciding, okay, these are the ones we're going to focus on. So it's a simple, get the flip chart out, get some post-it notes, or just get a pen and paper for yourself, think through the impact, the cost, and then just decide for yourselves, okay, which ones can we focus on now? Then it's about, right, we've identified the priorities and the things that we're going to focus on. For each one of those things, it's about setting some goals and defining your tactics. So just breaking it down into the actions that we're going to take, setting aside some budget if you have some, or if it's something that's not going to have a cost, but is just going to require a bit of someone's time, whose time is that going to be, and what's the deadline for getting it done? So obvious kind of project management stuff, but it's really the only way to get these things done. Another thing that I just wanted to show you, which is more of a communications framework, is really how to kind of package all of this into an overarching plan. So if you had a slide or a document where you just wanted to capture what your sustainability plan is, this is a kind of template that you can use where you might capture your overall ambition at the top in terms of the type of business that you want to be. And then you'll capture, these are the big areas that we're focusing on. For each of those, we've set ourselves a goal, and it can just be a goal that's qualitative for now if you're not able to set, a quantitative target. And then just list out the actions that you're going to take under each areas and the KPI or the metric that you're going to use to track whether you're making progress or not. It's a simple framework, but I think, again, when you put things down on paper, and if you can make this into a slide or a simple document that you can have to hand in conversations that you're having with buyers or other stakeholders, it can be helpful to just clearly show them, where you're focusing on and what you're doing. Step 5 is to kind of just basically get cracking, but implement or iterate as you go. And you can also add as you go as well. So the point of this is that the point of the prioritization is to choose a few manageable things to start with, get those done, get them ticked off, and then kind of move on to the more ambitious things as quickly as you can. You're going to kind of, try some things that might not work. And so then you'll have to adapt your approach and try again. So it's that classic, plan it out, do it, check if it's working, change it or tweak it if it's not, and then act again. So you might go around that cycle a few times, but it's all about just getting started and then building from there. And the final one is to communicate what you're doing. So that framework that I showed you there, where you might capture the areas that you're focusing on and the actions that you're taking underneath each one, that can be the basis of a kind of communications framework that you use. But as you'll all be very aware, greenwashing is a term that we hear a lot about. And I hear from a lot of companies who kind of feel nervous about talking too much about what they're doing on sustainability because they're worried that they're going to be accused of greenwashing. And it is a very real thing, and it should be a concern. But there are some simple things that I think businesses can do to avoid it. The main one is honesty. So if you just simply describe what you're doing and how you're doing it in a genuine way, then you're not going to get caught out. This is not about being perfect. Nobody has all the answers. Nobody is doing everything. It's about choosing some things that you can do that are going to be meaningful and have a positive impact, and then just describing what you're doing. Keep your statements specific, so less kind of lofty general claims and more specifics around what you're actually doing and the difference that it's making. Certifications and standards can help to kind of add that external seal of approval. And when you're communicating this, on your website or wherever, it's okay to talk about some of the things, some of the dilemmas or some of the challenges that you're facing. That makes it feel more genuine because everybody knows that this stuff is hard, that it's not straightforward. So it's good to be honest about some of the challenges and the things that you're thinking about, as well as the successes that you're having. If you're a larger business, there are lots of these formal sustainability reporting frameworks that you might be aligning with. I'm not going to go into those now, but larger businesses will be using these to guide them on what they should be saying and what data they should be providing in a sustainability report. If you're a small business, don't worry too much about these. You might be more interested in some of the certifications and standards. So Origin Green, of course, being a big one for Irish businesses. A couple of others there, B Corp, which I want to mention briefly because that is potentially a really good thing for smaller businesses to look at. And then if you're on the larger side, you'll be maybe looking at ISO standards. And if you're a corporate, you might be thinking about a science-based target, which is a particular type of climate target. But for smaller businesses, I wanted to mention B Corp. I don't know if you've heard of this. It stands for Benefit Corporation. And this is basically a certification. It's designed for companies that want to be about purpose as well as profit. And you go through the B Corp certification, and it asks you questions on a range of different areas. You get scored, and you have to achieve a certain minimum score in order to become B Corp certified. These are some of the kind of companies that are B Corps at the moment. There are about 4,000 or so. There are only 4 in Ireland at the moment. So there's plenty of room for more people to join. And it's a very well respected standard and certification. So I would encourage you to have a look at it. And even if you don't go for certification, which is a process in itself, what it does is it shows you the kinds of things that they ask for in these different areas: environment, workers, customers, community, and governance. And even by looking at their online impact assessment, you'll get a sense of the kinds of questions they're asking, and that gives you some good clues as to the types of things that you should be trying to put in place for your own business. I have a list of resources here of some useful things, including a couple of guides, as well as supports from SEAI and Enterprise Ireland that you might be interested in having a look at afterwards. So my final piece today then, if that's the kind of process that you go through to develop a kind of logical, prioritized and focused sustainability plan, here's some inspiration kind of more on the communication side and just showing some of the actions that people are taking. This is a company that Michael told me about when we were speaking earlier in the week. They have created the world's first climate positive gin and climate positive vodka. Their website tells a nice story. They keep it quite simple, which I like. And they just talk about what they're doing. They describe their kind of field to bottle ethos. And then here they talk about the particular process for creating this climate positive gin, which is really interesting. Another one I'd encourage you to have a look at is Bruichladdich. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Scottish whiskey company on the island of Islay. These guys are B Corp certified, so they have really good standards in terms of social and environmental issues. Their sustainability plan covers these 4 areas: so energy, agriculture and biodiversity, packaging and waste, and then the community. Again, if you have a look on their website, they're doing well that principle of like just talk about what we're doing. They're not trying to kind of over embellish. They're just telling you what they're doing in a way that's easy to understand, talking about those 4 areas where they've clearly gone through a process to look at the broad spectrum of issues, narrowed it down to these 4 main topics that they're focusing on, and then they're just telling us what they're doing on each of those. The last one that I wanted to show you is one that's outside of your sector, but that I also think is a really good example from a communications point of view. They're called Finisterre, and they're kind of like a clothing company based in the UK, down in Cornwall, I think. They have a very good approach to sustainability, and it's really nicely communicated on their website. So the structure that they use is to talk about sustainability in these 3 areas. So it's about people and what they do with communities. It's about the environment, zero waste and minimizing their carbon impact. And then it's about making their products and systems circular. They have actually produced a nice kind of impact report. And at the back of that, they just show you here what they're working on in 2020. Again, it's just descriptive of the actions that they're taking. Doesn't have to have all kind of big numbers and carbon targets, etc. Obviously, it's great if you can have that if you're a larger company. But if you're a smaller company, even just describing the actions that you're taking and that you intend to take is really good. So lots of inspiration to be had from Finisterre. I would just encourage you to take a look at their website as well. and the other couple of examples I've mentioned. It goes without saying that I'm sure, that there is undoubtedly lots of good work happening across Ireland's whisky companies, all of you on the call. I haven't managed to have a look at what everybody is doing. So that was by no means a representation of here's what I think good looks like. I just happened to know about those companies, hence mentioning them today. But I would love to have more time in the future to look at more of what you're all doing, and maybe we'll hear some of it now in our Q&A session. So Vincent, that's me done. Back to you.
Thanks, Karen. I'll just very, very quickly before I open the floor to Q&As. And Karen, if you want to leave your camera on, if I could ask both Martin and our chair, Michael Clancy, to turn your cameras on as well. But basically, we're just going to move on to the Q&A now. Again, just very quickly, the protocol for anybody who wishes to ask a question, use the raise your hand button as indicated. That's up at the top bar along the top of the screen. I think you'll see it there if you just hover your cursor over the image. There's show conversation, there's show participants, and the next one is a couple of images, and either there's an element there, raise your hand. So do that, or indeed just type question in. And if you want to come on, then to ask a question, just turn your camera on and unmute. So without further ado, I am going to stop presenting and floor is open. Mr. Chairman, maybe you have a question to start the ball rolling, and then to anybody else.
Yeah, I have I suppose, and it's quite an unusual one, and it's something that occurred to me when Martin was talking about buyers, and then just I thought back to my former life when I did a bit of consultancy in this area. Maybe it's a question for people in the floor as well. I was at some event, and it was actually in the UK, and there was a number of buyers there from supermarkets, and then there was obviously companies who were suppliers. And one of the things the buyers were committing to was that where companies were making savings due to sustainability initiatives, so whether that was on water or energy, that the buyers were the supermarkets were encouraging them to go along this pathway. But then the buyers were sort of giving a commitment that they wouldn't jump in and then try and take the savings and drive down the price accordingly. Have either of you or maybe any of the other companies on the call come across that or seen that in practice in your dealings with buyers, either supermarkets or other trade buyers?
From my experience dealing with companies, Michael, it's because I'm part of Board BIA, we're precluded about talking price, so they wouldn't directly say it for me in front of me. But in conversation with companies just outside the alcohol sector, I haven't heard that being brought up where companies is achieving efficiencies that they will then see cost reductions. However, there is other areas where they will see areas to make cost reductions, but they don't explicitly link it to sustainability as of yet.
I think there's a bit of background noise there. So, yeah. Okay. Karen, do you have a response to Michael's question?
No, I mean, I haven't experienced that directly myself. I haven't heard it from clients, but I mean, I'm just more aware of the general trend. I know that a lot of retailers have, they are developing supplier-focused initiatives and programs designed to encourage their suppliers to take action on these issues, particularly carbon and climate change, because the retailers themselves are setting ambitious targets. A lot of the time, their main carbon impacts are in the supply chain, so they are totally reliant on their suppliers making changes in order for them to be able to meet their own targets. So I know that there's programs being launched by some of the big retailers. I've seen some from Carrefour and others, and they are really trying to encourage suppliers. So less on the kind of monetary side of things, but more on the, giving information, tools, and sort of encouraging in that way, Michael, that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think what I come across, and it was some of the large retailers in the UK were running programs for their suppliers, but they were actually given a commitment to say, right, if you make savings due to these initiatives, we're not going to jump in and force your price down, which I thought was a good incentive for everyone to kind of wholeheartedly participate.
Definitely.
So anyway, might be just something worth keeping in mind at I suppose at Board B level, if you're engaging with supermarkets and buyers at that level. Just I suppose a comment then on both presentations. I thought they were both excellent, and I know, Martin, you held back a little bit. There was one of the when we were talking about this previously, there was the deck that you circulated to Vincent and myself and Karen, the Sustainability Insights deck, and one of the things that jumped out at me in that was the fact that retailers in France, I can't remember, was it Carrefour, now have an on-shelf sustainability rating for products, which is something that's, you know, that's you know, this is very real when it's getting to that point. So it's probably worthwhile that sharing that deck around as well. I think it'd be interesting for everyone, because again, and Karen, you referred to Finisterre, a clothing company, but it's often you get cross-pollination of ideas from one sector into another, and that can be very useful. And Karen, then as well, your templates and the kind of ideas you've thrown up there, particularly useful. There's a huge overlap with anyone who's going down the Board B Origin Green route. There's a huge overlap there, but there's also some other stuff in there. And for anyone who's any of our members who are in Northern Ireland, where Origin Green isn't part of what they're doing, that's going to be very useful as well.
I think we have just one comment there from Megan O'Donoghue from Mark Anthony Brands. Just, you know, said really good presentations. Thank you both for that. I will obviously be circulating a copy of the slides and a recording of the workshop to all members. So obviously those of you who are on this workshop now, I think the slides will probably be of more interest to you because you have participated in the workshop. But obviously the recording will go to the broader membership for those who weren't able to attend. And I have had one or two emails from people apologising for not being able to attend, but asking to see the recording. We still have a couple of minutes left. There's yeah, I mean, there's a couple more people on the call. Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, I know there are some good examples from members on this call of you know, environmental and sustainability type actions and activities that they're undertaking. I mean, do you want to flag them up, or well, equally also, do you want to actually ask a question of our speakers? Indeed, I see
a question there, Vincent.
He has. I was just going to finish what I was saying and then come to Connor. So Connor, if you just want to take yourself off mute and fire away.
Thanks to the speakers and thanks, Vincent. It's less of a question and more of a statement, I suppose. Obviously, we're looking into as much as we can to watch our metrics for sustainability in lots of facets. A lot of the times when we're being asked for information lately, from whatever bodies we're dealing with, it seems to be more about, and it's just an observation from what we've heard today from the speakers, and it always seems to be more about what we're going to do in the next 12 months, the next 5 years. But there's actually a lot of, I suppose, especially from what Karen was saying, there's no harm in shouting about what we are doing today, because there's a lot of distilleries that, I mean, if they were set up in any modern kind of times, they're probably recirculating heat exchangers, closed water loops already. I mean, without even knowing, if you look into your bottle suppliers, like one of our bottle suppliers, I know that they use 25% post-consumer recycled glass in all of their bottles automatically. When we buy our cardboard, if you ask your supplier, it probably is sustainably sourced. So I suppose, again, it's not a question, it's a statement. And it's just for myself, I realize we should be telling our story of what we are doing now, because every time we're asked about something from whatever organization, it's about what are you going to do in the future. But I think there are people doing an awful lot of good stuff already, and have a lot to shout about already, about where they source their ingredients, their raw materials for their packaging, and even the systems that they have in place in their own brewing, distilling operations. But because I've shied away a lot, I suppose, going, oh my God, how am I going to change this now in 12 months and 5 years, or whatever the case may be. But when I actually lift up the bonnet and look at what we're doing, inadvertently, we're already doing a lot that's very environmentally friendly or environmentally conscious. And I suppose it's no harm for us to tell people what we're doing now, and it doesn't have to be what we are going to. Well, obviously we need to look forward, but also just to tell our story about what we're doing now.
You're absolutely right, Conor, and I really I think that's one of the main messages that I hope people would take from today, and that's why in the process that I was describing, the first thing to do is to actually just write down everything that you're already doing. And sometimes, as you said, you won't even be conscious of it. You might not even know because you haven't had a chance to ask your packaging supplier yet about the details of the particular cardboard that you use, but ask for that, capture all of that, and then just group it into some of these kind of buckets of topics that you can talk about and get it down. When I worked with a food company in the UK called Organics, a children's food company, they're about 60 people, and then they have manufacturers making their stuff like that. They were doing a lot of good things already. And I worked with them to do their first sustainability report. And that report was pretty much just describing what they already do. And they couldn't believe it when they saw it all written down in one place, and when they had kind of, a section on environment, a section on people, a section on product, everything that they could actually already say, not to mind the future stuff. So I think that's absolutely right. Just capture that in a document somehow and start with that in any of your conversations.
Yeah, just and I think just to build on that, and it's a good segue into Vincent sent out a mail about a survey on sustainability in Irish whiskey. Not Vincent, William sent it out on the 10th of September, and he's looking for a call for case studies and examples of best practice by this Friday, 8th of October. So timely reminder for everyone to pull out that email, go through it, and both for William, but also for your own internal use, to actually take it and itemize and respond to it.
I think if I could just add to that very briefly, to echo Michael's comments there with regards to the survey that William circulated, and to absolutely echo what Conor has said. It is actually really important that we shout about what we are doing as a sector, that it's documented, as Karen says, and that it is there for us to actually point to, because, and I think both Martin and Karen have given you a sense of just how important the whole sustainability discussion is, and how it is growing in importance, and there's more of a demand on it. And obviously Ireland has signed up to a significant number of targets from the point of view of climate change, et cetera, looking towards 2030. At a European level, sustainability is part of the Green New Deal, and it is one of the key pillars which the von der Leyen Commission is basically hanging the success of its 5-year term on. So sustainability, the environment, climate is, I won't say an out of control train, but it is a train traveling at high speed coming down the tracks at everybody. And as Conor rightly said, an awful lot, the vast majority of the small distilleries in Ireland that are either established or in the process of being established have been set up using up-to-date technology, putting in place sustainability mechanisms that enable it to act in a quite sustainable way. So we need to be able to actually prove and to show what we are doing because the demands that are coming down the tracks with regards to sustainability, with regards to the environment, you know, as a sector, we are doing this. So we need to be able to actually go out and show this. So, I mean, I'm just echoing what everybody has said there. We are doing, we just need to document. So again, as Michael said, please do respond to the email that William circulated. And when we as a trade association working on your behalf, whether it's Irish Whiskey, Drinks Ireland Spirits, or Drinks Ireland as a whole, make shout outs on sustainability, it's really important that members, if you have sustainability stories that you are proud of, to shout out, to point them out to us, and to give us this information so we can use it on your behalf. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We did say 12 to 1:15. So, I mean, does anybody else have a final question or comment that they would like to make?
I've just one final comment, Vincent. So, and again, just to thank both of the speakers and yourself again for the seminar. And I think it's just a point that Karen made was, you know, pick some of the achievable things and just get started, get doing, because that will not only you know, get something done, but it also creates a bit of a morale boost for people, and it, you know, it basically makes it from being such a big daunting thing to being something that, yeah, we've done a bit of it, we can bite off a chunk of it and start doing. So I think that's probably just a thought to take forward as well.
Okay, I think unless anybody else has any further questions, we can probably bring this workshop to a close. Just to echo what Michael said, I'd particularly like to thank Karen and Martin for taking the time out of their busy diaries to participate and to share their knowledge and experience on sustainability. Both of their contact details will be in the slide deck that will be circulated if anybody wishes to get in contact with either of them. As I said earlier on, there will be a recording made of, there is a recording being made of this meeting, and that will be circulated in due course, as will a copy of the slides. And I don't think this is the first or the last time we will be discussing sustainability. This is an issue as an association we are turning our attention more and more to, because it is an issue that you, the members, have actually flagged up to us as something that we all need to be paying more attention to, working on and contributing to. So I hope that this workshop, just focusing on a very basic thing it might sound like, which is your sustainability strategy, but actually a very important start to anything that you wish to do on a sustainability footing. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Karen, thank you, Martin, and thank you, Michael, for sharing. See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.